The mahogany conference table gleamed under the recessed lighting, just as it had for every quarterly meeting since I was 16. The familiar scent of leather portfolios and Dad's sandalwood cologne filled the air. My brother Nathan adjusted his tie while Dad reviewed the succession documents with methodical precision, like he was still closing his biggest merger deals. For a moment, I almost convinced myself this was just another routine meeting. Then, as Dad slid the CEO announcement across the table, he looked up at Nathan and smiled. "The board will ratify your appointment next week, son." The pen froze in my hand as I stared at them both. I blinked. But I already own 60% of the company. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Dad's executive suite hadn't changed in 15 years. The same awards lined the walls, the same vintage globe bar stood in the corner, the same skyline view dominated the floor-to-ceiling windows. I'd been summoned, yes, summoned, via his executive assistant, to the quarterly strategy meeting. The email mentioned important succession announcements, but I'd assumed it was about one of the VP positions. "Emma, good to see you," Dad said when I arrived, his voice carrying that practiced warmth he used for important clients. Nathan was already there, of course, seated at Dad's right hand, his Italian suit perfectly tailored, hair freshly cut. They shared that same square jawline, those same confident eyes. I slid into my usual seat across from them, smoothing my skirt beneath me. "Sorry I'm late. The R&D team needed sign-off on the new prototype. Always buried in the technical details," Dad said with a chuckle. "That's our Emma." I smiled tightly, used to these little diminishments. My work in product development had transformed our outdated manufacturing company into a tech-forward industry leader, but somehow my contributions were always reduced to technical details. Nathan launched into his quarterly sales presentation. Growth was steady, not spectacular. He'd inherited Dad's gift for presentation, the confident stance, the persuasive tone, the strategic pauses. What he lacked in innovation, he made up for in polish. Dad nodded along, pride evident in every glance. When Nathan finished, Dad didn't even look at my portfolio, the one containing projections showing how my latest patents would increase profit margins by 23%. Instead, he cleared his throat and pulled a leather folio from his briefcase. "As you both know, I'll be 70 next month. It's time I stepped back and let the next generation take Harrington Industries forward." I sat up straighter. This was expected, of course. Dad had been hinting at retirement for years, though he'd never quite been able to let go. "I've given this considerable thought," he continued, "and discussed it extensively with the board." My stomach tightened. The board. Those 5 men. All Dad's golf buddies, all cut from the same cloth. I'd presented to them a dozen times, always leaving with patronizing compliments about being Jack's brilliant daughter, but never true recognition. Dad slid the documents across the table, to Nathan. "The board will ratify your appointment as CEO next week, son. Congratulations." Nathan's face broke into a wide grin as he accepted the papers. "Thank you, Dad. I won't let you down." I felt the blood rush from my face. The room seemed to tilt slightly, the familiar space suddenly alien. "Emma will continue leading product development, of course," Dad added, finally glancing my way. "Your technical expertise is invaluable to the company." The pen I'd been holding froze midair. My voice, when I found it, was surprisingly steady. "But I already own 60% of the company." The silence that followed was absolute. Nathan's smile faltered. Dad's eyebrows drew together in confusion. "What did you say?" he asked, his tone suggesting he'd misheard rather than misunderstood. I placed my portfolio on the table and opened it, revealing not product projections but legal documents. "I said, I already own 60% of Harrington Industries. I have for nearly 2 years now." Dad's face darkened. "That's impossible. The family shares are split evenly between you two, with controlling interest held by me until I choose to step down." "That was the arrangement," I agreed, sliding the document toward him. "Until you leveraged your shares for the Richardson acquisition." His eyes narrowed. "That loan was paid back. The shares returned to family control." "Not exactly," I said. "The loan was repaid, but the ownership structure changed. When you needed additional capital to complete the deal, I provided it. In exchange, I received shares from 3 retiring board members, plus conversion of my preferred shares. It's all documented here." Dad snatched the papers, his fingers leaving indentations on the crisp pages. Nathan leaned over, his expression shifting from confusion to alarm as they both scanned the legal text. "Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. This can't be right, Nathan muttered. Why wouldn't you tell us? I kept my voice level. I assumed Dad knew. The documentation was filed with corporate counsel. Wyatt never mentioned this to me, Dad said, naming our longtime company lawyer. Wyatt retired last year, I reminded him. Jessica Chen has been our general counsel since then. Dad's face flushed. You did this behind my back. I did this through proper legal channels, while you were restructuring the company without consulting me, I corrected. The board meeting minutes from March last year show your explicit direction to proceed without my input because I was too focused on product minutiae to grasp the bigger financial picture. Nathan pushed back from the table. This is ridiculous. You can't just take control of the family company. I didn't take anything, I said. I invested. I protected. I secured. Dad's hands were shaking slightly as he flipped through the documents. These would have required board approval. They had it. 3 meetings ago. You were in Switzerland for that medical conference. Nathan was in Dubai on the distribution center opening. The vote was unanimous among attending members. Dad's face had lost its color now. Jessica should have flagged this. She did. She sent 3 emails and left 2 voicemails. Your assistant said you were too busy to deal with routine shareholder matters. Nathan stood abruptly. This is a trick. Some kind of corporate espionage. I almost laughed. It's all completely legal. I've operated as a silent majority partner out of respect for Dad's position. I had no intention of disrupting leadership until the natural transition point. I gestured to the succession documents. Which apparently is now. Dad's jaw worked as he struggled to process what was happening. You can't run this company, Emma. You don't have the experience. I've been running the most profitable division. For 7 years, I countered. Our product patents generate 65% of company revenue. I've sat in every executive meeting, reviewed every quarterly report, and developed our 5-year strategic plan, the one the board unanimously approved last year. That was my plan, Nathan interjected. No, it wasn't. You presented it, but Jessica has the original drafts with my watermark and revision history. Dad slammed his hand on the table. Enough. This is still my company, and I will not have it stolen from under me by my own daughter. The word stolen hung in the air between us, sharp and accusatory. I stood slowly, gathering my documents. Nothing was stolen. Every transaction is documented, legitimate, and transparent to anyone who bothered to look. I closed my portfolio. I have a product review meeting in 15 minutes. I suggest you both take time to review these documents thoroughly. We can reconvene tomorrow to discuss next steps. I walked out of the conference room, my heels clicking against the marble floor with each deliberate step. Only when I reached the elevator did I allow myself to exhale fully, the weight of the confrontation settling into my shoulders. My assistant Lucy was waiting at my office, concern evident in her expression. How did it go? I closed the door. Behind me. Exactly as expected. The product meeting proceeded normally, my exterior calm betraying none of the earthquake that had just rocked the company's leadership. Afterward, I canceled my remaining appointments and drove home in silence. The skyline of Seattle disappearing behind me as I crossed Lake Washington. My condo felt empty, minimalist by design but hollow in that moment. I kicked off my heels, poured a glass of Cabernet, and stepped onto the balcony overlooking the water. The spring air carried the scent of cherry blossoms from the trees below. 7 years. That's how long I'd been fighting for genuine recognition at Harrington Industries. 7 years of watching Nathan sail through on charm and connections while I drove innovation and growth. 7 years of being the technical daughter, the one with the engineering degree from MIT that somehow counted for less than Nathan's business degree from Dad's alma mater. My phone buzzed incessantly, messages from Nathan, from Dad, from board members suddenly discovering my majority stake. I silenced it and watched the ferries cross the Sound, their steady progress a contrast to the turbulence of the day. The confrontation had been inevitable, though its timing wasn't of my choosing. I'd planned to wait until after Dad's retirement party next month, to spare him the public transition of power. But his announcement today had forced my hand. I thought back to how it all began, to the day I realized I would always be secondary in the Harrington succession plan regardless of my contributions. It was during my 2nd year leading product development. Our flagship industrial sensor was losing market share to a German competitor. While Nathan and Dad focused on aggressive sales tactics and customer incentives, I spent months redesigning the core technology. My team worked weekends and nights, testing prototypes, refining the design. When we finally unveiled the next generation sensor, smaller, more accurate, and 30% cheaper to manufacture, it should have been a triumph. The board meeting where we presented the new product line should have been my moment of validation. Instead, Nathan delivered the presentation. While I sat silently at the table, Dad introduced the innovation as Nathan's initiative, supported by Emma's technical team. The board members nodded approvingly, congratulating my brother on his vision. That night, I sat in my office after everyone had gone, staring at the prototype in my hands. The unfairness burned, but something else crystallized too, a determination that would reshape everything. I began paying closer attention to the business side, studying market trends, analyzing financial reports. I took night classes in corporate finance and business law. I built relationships with investors and industry leaders at conferences where Nathan and Dad rarely bothered to appear. When our longtime CFO mentioned he was looking to sell his shares before retirement, I made him an offer. When two aging board members wanted to liquidate their holdings, I was there with capital ready. Each transaction was small enough to fly under the radar of day-to-day operations but significant in the broader ownership structure. Dad's financial misstep with the Richardson acquisition was the final piece. He'd overextended, assuming the deal would close quickly. When complications arose, the company faced a cash shortfall. Rather than approaching outside investors, I offered my own capital and took the additional shares as security. None of this had been planned as a hostile takeover. It was insurance, protection against being sidelined when leadership eventually changed hands. I never expected to use my majority position. I truly believed that when the time came, Dad would recognize my contributions and consider me equally for the CEO role. Today had proven that belief naive. My phone rang again, Dad's private line this time. After a moment's hesitation, I answered. Emma. His voice sounded older, tired. We need to talk. I'm listening. Not like this. Come to the house. Your mother's making dinner. I closed my eyes. Mom. She'd be caught in the middle now, trying to mediate as she always had. I'll be there at 7, I said before hanging up. The drive to my childhood home in Medina took longer than usual, traffic clogging the bridges as I rehearsed what I would say. The sprawling lakefront property came into view, 6 bedrooms for a family of 4, manicured gardens, a dock with 2 boats. The physical manifestation of Dad's success, the legacy he'd built. Mom answered the door, her smile strained. Emma, sweetheart. She embraced me, her familiar perfume momentarily transporting me back to simpler times. Your father and brother are in the study. Of course they were. The study had always been their domain, the place for men's talk about business and sports and politics. As a child, I'd press my ear to the door, desperate to be included. Is there something I should know before I go in? I asked quietly. Mom hesitated. They've been talking for hours. Nathan is upset. I nodded, unsurprised. Nathan had always expected things to go his way, had never developed the resilience that comes from fighting for recognition. The study door was open when I reached it. Dad sat behind his desk, looking unusually diminished. Nathan paced by the windows, his tie loosened, hair disheveled. Emma, Dad acknowledged as I entered. Sit down, please. I took the leather chair opposite his desk. I've reviewed the succession documents, he continued. And your ownership paperwork. And? I prompted when he paused. And it appears you've orchestrated quite the corporate maneuver. There was something like grudging respect in his tone, beneath the obvious displeasure. Jessica confirmed everything. The board is concerned. Concerned that they didn't notice, or concerned about what happens next? I asked. Both. Dad leaned forward. What is it you want, Emma? The question hung there, deceptively. Simple yet loaded with decades of family dynamics and corporate politics. What I've always wanted, I answered carefully. Recognition for my contributions. A fair evaluation of my capabilities. Consideration for leadership based on merit rather than gender or birth order. Nathan made a scoffing sound from the window. This isn't about your capabilities. This is about loyalty. You went behind our backs. After being kept out of crucial decisions for years, I countered. After watching you get promoted over more qualified candidates because you're Dad's son. That's not fair, Dad interjected. Nathan has earned his position. Has he? His division has underperformed for 3 consecutive quarters. His major initiative, the Asian expansion, is 2 years behind schedule and millions over budget. Meanwhile, my division exceeds targets consistently, generates most of our patents, and creates the innovations that keep us competitive. Nathan's face darkened. We can't all hide in the lab playing with prototypes. Some of us have to do the hard work of actually running the business. I laughed, the sound sharp and humorless. That playing funds your corporate jet and inflated expense account. When was the last time you brought in a new client without leveraging Dad's relationships? Enough. Dad stood, his authority filling the room despite the day's revelations. This kind of infighting is exactly why I chose Nathan. He doesn't create conflict. He doesn't challenge you, you mean, I corrected. He doesn't question the status quo or push for necessary changes. He maintains the comfortable patterns that have worked for you but won't carry the company forward. Dad's expression hardened. You've made your point with this ownership play. What do you propose now? A public battle for control that damages the company and family both? I shook my head. That was never my intention. I proposed that we have an honest conversation about succession based on performance and capability, not preconceived notions. And if that conversation doesn't go your way? Nathan demanded. You'll force the issue with your shares? The tension in the room was thick enough to touch. Mom appeared in the doorway, her presence a gentle interruption. Dinner's ready. We followed her to the dining room in strained silence. The familiar setting, the antique table that had hosted countless family meals, the crystal chandelier that cast warm light over the scene, felt surreal against the backdrop of corporate warfare. Mom had prepared Dad's favorite, prime rib with Yorkshire pudding. We took our usual seats, the weight of unresolved conflict hanging over us as dishes were passed and wine was poured. I remember when you two were little, Mom said into the silence. Emma would build elaborate structures with blocks, and Nathan would convince the other children at playgroup to come see them. You were always a perfect team. Her attempt at reconciliation fell flat. Nathan stabbed at his meat while I sipped water, neither of us willing to indulge the childhood reminiscence. Your mother's right, Dad said finally. This company needs both of you. Your different strengths complement each other. Then why wasn't I even considered for CEO? I asked directly. Dad set down his fork. Leadership isn't just about performance metrics, Emma. It's about presence, about inspiring confidence. And you don't think I have presence? After leading global product launches, securing partnerships with major tech firms, and being invited to speak at industry conferences that neither of you attend? It's different, Dad insisted. Nathan has the kind of leadership people naturally follow. You mean men naturally follow, I corrected. Our workforce is 40% female now, Dad. The industry is changing. Our clients are changing. The leadership style that worked for you won't necessarily work for the next generation. Nathan pushed his plate away. This is pointless. She's already made up her mind. I've presented facts, I countered. You've offered nothing but vague assertions about natural leadership that coincidentally align with promoting someone just like you. Dad's jaw tightened. I built this company from nothing. I think I know what kind of leadership it needs. You built a different company, I said more gently. Harrington was an industrial manufacturing firm when you started. Now we're as much a technology company as a manufacturer. Our competitors aren't just the old players anymore, we're competing with tech giants moving into industrial spaces. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Dad's face, the first genuine consideration I'd seen from him. The board supports Nathan's appointment. The board hasn't been given all the information. They've seen curated presentations that highlight Nathan's contributions while minimizing mine. They haven't seen the full financial breakdowns by division or the source attribution for innovation patents. Dad glanced at Nathan, whose expression had grown increasingly uncomfortable. Is that true? Nathan shifted in his seat. I present the information that's relevant to overall company performance. Selectively, I added. The board doesn't know that my division's profit margins are nearly double the company average, or that our customer retention rate is 30% higher. The revelation hung in the air as Dad processed this information. After a long moment, he spoke carefully. Even if what you say is true, the fact remains that you now control the company through means that, while perhaps technically legal, feel underhanded. I didn't intend to use that control, I said honestly. It was insurance against exactly this scenario, being passed over despite superior performance. So what happens now? Mom asked quietly, her question cutting through the corporate posturing to the heart of the family matter. I set down my napkin. That depends on whether Dad and the board are willing to conduct a fair evaluation of CEO candidates based on objective criteria. And if we don't? Dad challenged. Then I'll call a special shareholder meeting and exercise my voting rights, I said simply. But I'd rather not do that. Nathan pushed back from the table abruptly. This is extortion. This is business. I corrected. Something you claim to understand better than I do. Dad raised a hand to silence Nathan's retort. Give us the room. I need to speak with your sister alone. After a moment's hesitation, Nathan stormed out. Mom followed more quietly, pausing to squeeze my shoulder as she passed. When we were alone, Dad seemed to deflate slightly, the corporate titan giving way to an aging man confronting his own biases. "You really believe you're the better choice for CEO?" he asked, his tone more curious than confrontational. "I know I am," I replied. "Not because I'm smarter or more dedicated than Nathan, but because my vision for the company aligns with where the industry is headed, not where it's been." Dad nodded slowly. "You've always seen things differently. Even as a child, you'd find solutions to problems I didn't know existed. That's what Harrington needs now, someone who sees around corners, who anticipates change rather than reacting to it." "Nathan will be devastated," Dad said, more to himself than to me. "Only if you frame it as failure," I countered. "He's excellent at what he does. Our client relationships are strong because of him. But being CEO isn't a birthright or a reward for loyalty, it's a specific role that requires specific capabilities." Dad was quiet for a long moment, studying me with new eyes. "When did you become so formidable?" "I've always been formidable, Dad. You just weren't looking." He nodded slowly, a mixture of regret and pride crossing his features. "I need time to think, to discuss this with the board." "Take all the time you need," I said, rising from the table. "But know that the quarterly shareholders meeting is in 3 weeks. One way or another, leadership will be decided by then." As I drove back to my condo that night, the Seattle skyline glittered across the water like possibilities waiting to be realized. The confrontation had been necessary, painful but essential for both the company and our family. I wasn't naive enough to believe one dinner conversation would resolve decades of unconscious bias or overturn Dad's deeply held beliefs about leadership. But for the first time, he'd truly seen me, not as his technical daughter, but as a force to be reckoned with. That visibility, that recognition, was the first step toward change. Whether it would be enough remained to be seen. My first week as Harrington Industries Product Development Director flashed through my mind as I drove home from that confrontation dinner. 7 years ago, I'd stepped into the gleaming headquarters with my MIT engineering degree and a portfolio of ideas that would eventually transform our outdated manufacturing firm into an industry technology leader. I remembered the weight of Dad's hand on my shoulder as he introduced me to the executive team. "This is my daughter, Emma. She'll be handling our technical side while she learns the business." The subtle dismissal in his tone, the way he positioned my role as temporary, preparatory, it burned even in memory. That first morning, I arrived at 6:30 a.m. to find my office, not the corner suite I'd been promised, but a windowless interior room next to the engineering lab. My brother Nathan already occupied the VP suite adjacent to Dad's office, despite having joined the company only 6 months earlier than me, fresh from his MBA. His business degree from Dad's alma mater apparently counted for more than my engineering doctorate and 3 patents. I set up my workspace methodically, arranging my credentials and awards where visitors couldn't miss them. Validation through decoration, a small rebellion. By 7:15, I was reviewing the product pipeline, frowning at outdated designs and missed opportunities. Our flagship industrial sensors were losing market share to sleeker, more efficient German competitors. The innovation pipeline was stagnant, focused on incremental improvements rather than substantive advances. At our first executive meeting, I presented my concerns alongside a roadmap for revitalization. Dad listened politely, nodding occasionally, while the other executives, all men, all cut from the same cloth as Dad, exchanged glances. "These are interesting theories, Emma," Dad said when I finished. "But Harrington has succeeded for 40 years with our current approach. Nathan's sales strategy will address the market share issues." Nathan smiled confidently, outlining aggressive pricing and marketing tactics that would do nothing to address our fundamental product weaknesses. The others nodded along, deferential to the son being groomed for succession. That night, I worked until midnight, diving deep into performance metrics and competitor analyses. If hard data wouldn't convince them, nothing would. For 6 months, I fought for every resource, every approval. I built my team carefully, seeking out the brilliant but overlooked, engineers passed over for promotion, designers whose innovations had been shelved, women and minorities whose talents had been systematically undervalued. We became a kind of underground movement within the company, working nights and weekends on prototype designs that would eventually save Harrington from obsolescence. When our next generation sensor was finally ready, smaller, more precise, and 30% cheaper to manufacture, I requested time at the board meeting to present our breakthrough. Dad agreed reluctantly, allocating me 15 minutes at the end of a 3-hour agenda. The night before the presentation, I rehearsed in front of my bathroom mirror, timing each slide transition, anticipating questions. This would be my moment. To prove my worth, to show that I deserved a real voice in the company's future. I arrived at the boardroom the next morning to find Nathan standing at the head of the table, my presentation slides open on his laptop. "What are you doing?" I asked, confusion giving way to dawning realization. "Dad asked me to handle the product announcement," he said casually. "The board responds better to me, and we need their full support for the production investment." My protests died on my lips as Dad entered with the board members. "Good morning, everyone. Nathan has an exciting development to share from our product team." I sat silently as my brother presented my team's work as if it were his initiative. His vision. He stumbled through the technical specifications, glossing over the engineering breakthroughs to focus on market potential. Dad beamed with pride, while I gripped my portfolio so tightly my knuckles whitened. "This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking that will secure Harrington's future," Dad concluded. "Nathan has really demonstrated his leadership with this project." The board members nodded approvingly, congratulating my brother while I sat invisible despite being the only person in the room who truly understood how the technology worked. Later that day, Dad stopped by my office. "That went well, don't you think?" The board approved the production budget. "Nathan took credit for my team's work," I said quietly. Dad frowned. He presented the business case. "Your technical contribution was acknowledged." My technical contribution was the entire innovation. My team worked nights and weekends for months while Nathan was in Aspen skiing with clients. Dad's expression hardened. "This is why you're not ready for higher leadership, Emma. You're too focused on individual credit instead of company success. Nathan understands that we win as a team. A team where some members are showcased and others are hidden. That's it. You'll have plenty of opportunities to shine in the technical realm. That's where your strengths lie. Nathan has the big picture. Business acumen this company needs." After he left, I sat motionless, the injustice burning in my chest. It wasn't just about credit, it was about value, about having my contributions recognized for what they were, essential to the company's survival. That night marked the beginning of my transformation. I realized that technical brilliance alone would never earn me equal footing in Dad's eyes. If I wanted true recognition, I needed to understand every aspect of the business he claimed I lacked. Aptitude 4. I enrolled in night classes on corporate finance and business law. I studied market trends and competitive analyses until I could discuss them with the same confidence Nathan projected. I built relationships with investors and industry leaders at conferences Dad and Nathan rarely attended, expanding my network beyond the technical sphere. Most importantly, I began paying attention to the company's ownership structure, to the subtle power dynamics that truly governed Harrington Industries beneath the family facade. Our longtime CFO, Richard Greaves, became my unofficial mentor. A brilliant financial mind nearing retirement, Richard had watched the company evolve over 30 years and recognized the changing landscape that Dad and Nathan refused to see. "Jack was a visionary in his day," Richard told me over coffee one morning. "But he's clinging to an outdated business model. Manufacturing is becoming technology, and technology moves faster than he's comfortable with. Nathan won't change things either," I observed. "He's too eager for Dad's approval to challenge the status quo." Richard studied me thoughtfully. "You know, I'll be retiring next year. I've got a significant share allocation as part of my long-term compensation. Been thinking about what to do with it." The opportunity wasn't stated explicitly, but I understood. "I'd be interested in discussing options," I said carefully. He nodded. "I thought you might be. Let's have dinner next week. Bring your financial advisor." That dinner was the first step in a 2-year journey that would ultimately lead to my majority ownership. Richard sold me his shares at a fair price, introducing me to 2 aging board members with similar retirement plans. Each transaction was conducted legally, transparently, though without fanfare. I became a significant minority shareholder without altering my official role or challenging the leadership structure. The final piece fell into place unexpectedly when Dad overextended the company's resources on the Richardson acquisition, a manufacturing competitor with outdated equipment but valuable client contracts. He'd leveraged Harrington's available capital and his personal shares, assuming the deal would close quickly. When regulatory complications created a 3-month delay, the company faced a cash shortfall. Dad called an emergency executive meeting, seeking solutions without approaching outside investors who might demand board seats or strategic changes. "We need $8 million to bridge the gap until closing," he explained. "The banks want additional collateral we don't have." Nathan suggested aggressive cost-cutting measures that would have gutted my R&D department. The CFO who had replaced Richard recommended selling off a smaller subsidiary that had been my pet project, focused on emerging sensor technologies. Instead, I cleared my throat. "I can provide the capital." All eyes turned to me with varying degrees of surprise. "You? Dad asked skeptically. Where would you get that kind of money? I've been investing wisely, I said simply, not elaborating on the consulting income I'd earned developing specialized applications for our technology, or the early stock options I'd negotiated instead of salary increases. I can have the funds transferred by tomorrow, secured against appropriate share allocation. Dad hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the shift in dynamics this would create, but lacking viable alternatives. We'll need to discuss terms. The terms, drafted by my attorney and reviewed by Jessica Chen, our new general counsel, were straightforward. I would provide the necessary capital in exchange for a combination of preferred shares and the conversion of my existing stake to a higher share class. The documentation was impeccable, the board approval obtained during a meeting Dad and Nathan both missed due to international commitments. When the dust settled, I owned 60% of Harrington Industries, a fact recorded in corporate filings but never discussed at family dinners or executive meetings. I continued in my role as product development director, driving innovation while observing the increasingly concerning decisions made by Dad and Nathan from their position of assumed control. The company prospered largely because of my division's breakthroughs, while Nathan's sales team consistently missed targets and his international expansion floundered. Dad either didn't notice or chose not to acknowledge the disparity, continuing to groom Nathan for succession while limiting my visibility with the board. I might have maintained my silent position indefinitely, content to protect the company's future through my controlling interest while focusing on the work I loved. But then came the Osaka debacle, the tipping point that made me realize more direct intervention would eventually be necessary. Nathan had negotiated a major distribution partnership with a Japanese industrial conglomerate, promising customized sensor systems for their new smart factory initiative. The deal, worth potentially $50 million annually, had been announced with great fanfare, Nathan taking center stage at the press conference while I stood in the background despite my team being responsible for the actual technology. 2 weeks before the contract signing, Nathan called me to his office, uncharacteristically agitated. We have a problem with the Osaka specifications, he said, sliding a document across his desk. Their engineers are insisting on integration capabilities we don't have. I reviewed the technical requirements. These weren't in the original scope. They're asking for real-time adaptation algorithms that would require a complete architecture redesign. So make it happen, Nathan said dismissively. The signing ceremony is in 2 weeks. Dad's already flying to Tokyo. This is at least 6 months of development work. We'd need to pull engineers from 3 other projects, delay the Morgan implementation, and still might not meet their stability requirements. Nathan's jaw tightened. That's not acceptable. Figure it out. This is your job, isn't it? The technical details? That dismissive phrase again, technical details, reducing months of complex engineering to trivial minutiae. These aren't details, Nathan. They're fundamental capabilities that can't be magically produced because you overpromised. His face darkened. I did not overpromise. Their requirements changed. Did they? Or did you not understand what they were asking for in the first place? He stood abruptly. Just fix it, Emma. That's what Dad pays you for. I spent the next 3 days analyzing the specifications, conferring with my senior engineers, even consulting outside experts. The conclusion was unanimous: meeting Osaka's requirements on Nathan's timeline was impossible without compromising system integrity. I drafted a detailed explanation with 3 alternative approaches: a phased implementation that would deliver core functionality on schedule with advanced features following in quarterly updates, a modified architecture that would meet most requirements but sacrifice some efficiency, or a strategic partnership with a specialized AI firm to accelerate development. Dad rejected all 3 without fully reading the report. Nathan has committed us to this timeline, he said firmly. The Tanaka family is flying in for the signing ceremony. We cannot lose face by renegotiating now. We'll lose more than face when we deliver a system that doesn't work, I argued. Your job is to make it work, he replied, the discussion clearly over. For the next 10 days, my team worked around the clock, attempting the impossible while I documented every decision, every warning, every ignored recommendation. When the inevitable failure came, a catastrophic system crash during the final demonstration for Osaka's technical team, I had a comprehensive record of the decisions that led to that moment. The fallout was severe. The contract was not only lost but our reputation in the Asian market severely damaged. Dad returned from Japan furious, looking for someone to blame. A board meeting was called to address the technical failure. I sat silently as Nathan presented his version of events, how the product team had failed to execute despite clear specifications, how last-minute technical problems had blindsided the leadership team. When he finished, I requested time to speak. Dad reluctantly agreed. Instead of defending myself verbally, I connected my laptop to the projection system and displayed my documentation chronologically, the original specifications, my warnings, the rejected alternatives, emails showing exactly when requirements had changed and who had been informed. The timeline was damning, leaving no doubt that the failure stemmed from Nathan's misrepresentations and Dad's refusal to adjust course when presented with engineering realities. The boardroom fell silent when I finished. Dad's expression was thunderous, while Nathan stared at the table, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Why wasn't the board informed of these risks? Gerald Harper, our most senior board member, finally asked. I submitted my concerns in writing to both the CEO and EVP of sales, I replied calmly. I was informed that it was not my place to alarm the board with technical complications. The meeting ended abruptly, with Dad promising a full review of processes. No such review ever materialized. Instead, Nathan was quietly moved to domestic operations, while an experienced sales executive was brought in to salvage the international division. It was a minor victory that changed nothing fundamental about the company's leadership structure or decision-making processes. Dad continued positioning Nathan as his successor, dismissing the Osaka incident as an unfortunate miscommunication, rather than a systemic failure. 6 months later, when Dad announced his retirement plans, I wasn't surprised to learn he had already begun succession planning without consulting me. The board had apparently been presented with Nathan's candidacy as a foregone conclusion, his past failures glossed over while my contributions remained categorized as technical support. It was then that I finally accepted the truth: Dad would never see me as leadership material, regardless of performance or capability. His vision of Harrington's future was fixed, a continuation of his legacy through his son, regardless of whether that vision best served the company or its shareholders. That realization brought not anger but clarity. I had built my ownership position for precisely this moment, when sentiment and tradition threatened to override sound business judgment. I had become the silent guardian of Harrington's future, accumulated the power to protect the company even from its founder's blind spots. As I prepared for the confrontation I knew was coming, I felt an unexpected calm. This wasn't about personal vindication anymore, it was about stewardship, about ensuring that the company that bore our family name would thrive in a changing world. When Dad finally summoned me to that fateful meeting and announced Nathan as his chosen successor, I was ready. The shock on their faces when I revealed my controlling interest wasn't about power or revenge, it was simply the necessary correction of a long-standing imbalance, the unveiling of truth that had been documented, but ignored. Now, as I sat in my condo overlooking Lake Washington after that tense family dinner, I knew the real work was just beginning. Ownership provided leverage, but true leadership would require more than legal control. It would demand vision, persuasion, and the ability to heal the family rifts this revelation had exposed. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica Chen, our general counsel, board members calling. Questions about ownership transition. How do you want to proceed? I typed my response carefully: schedule individual calls tomorrow. Transparency is our priority now. This isn't a hostile takeover, it's a course correction. As I set down my phone, I realized that tomorrow would be the first day of a new chapter for Harrington Industries. Whether Dad and Nathan would be part of that story remained to be seen, but the company's future would no longer be determined by gender bias or familial favoritism. It would be determined by capability, vision, and performance, the meritocracy I had always believed in, now finally within reach. The executive floor was unnaturally quiet when I arrived the next morning. Eyes followed me through the glass-walled corridor, curious, apprehensive, speculative. News travels fast in corporate environments, especially news that reshapes power structures overnight. I maintained a deliberate pace, neither hurrying nor hesitating, my heels clicking a steady rhythm against the marble floors. Jessica Chen was waiting outside my office, tablet in hand, expression professionally neutral despite the corporate earthquake she'd helped facilitate. "Morning, Jessica," I said, unlocking my door. "I assume the rumors are spreading?" "Like wildfire," she confirmed, following me inside. "3 board members have called already. The executive team is requesting an emergency meeting. Your father hasn't arrived yet." I set my portfolio on my desk and took a deep breath, surveying the space I'd occupied for 7 years. The windowless office suddenly felt symbolic, a physical manifestation of how the company had contained and limited me despite my contributions. "Call building services," I decided. "I'll be moving to the empty corner office on the east side today." Jessica's eyebrow raised slightly. "Your father's office?" "No. The one that's been vacant since the Richardson acquisition. It's technically allocated to the Chief Innovation Officer, a position that's remained conveniently unfilled despite my recommendations. She made a note. And the executive meeting? Schedule it for 11 a.m. I want time to speak with key division heads individually first. Your father and brother? I paused, considering. When they arrive, tell them I'll meet with them at 10:30 in the boardroom. Just us, no assistants. Jessica nodded, professional as always, though I detected a hint of admiration in her eyes. You've been planning this for some time, haven't you? Not this exactly, I clarified. I never intended a confrontation. But I've been preparing for the possibility that the company's future might depend on my ability to step forward. Well, she said, allowing herself a small smile, it appears that time has come. After she left, I opened my laptop and reviewed the presentation I'd prepared months ago but never expected to use, my vision for Harrington Industries' next 5 years. The succession plan I would have presented had I been given the opportunity. The roadmap that would now serve as my mandate. My first meeting was with Marcus Chen, our head of manufacturing, a brilliant operations expert who'd been repeatedly overlooked for executive promotion despite transforming our production efficiency. Like me, Marcus had learned to work within the constraints of Dad's outdated leadership model, finding workarounds and quiet innovations that delivered results without challenging the status quo too directly. I heard rumors, he said as he settled into the chair across from my desk. Something about ownership changes? The rumors are true, I confirmed. I hold majority ownership of Harrington Industries. I've held it for nearly 2 years. His eyes widened slightly, then he nodded slowly. That explains a few things. The board approving our automation project despite Jack's hesitation. The sustainability initiatives moving forward even when Nathan argued they weren't cost-effective. I've exercised my influence sparingly, I acknowledged. Only when essential to the company's long-term interests. And now? Now leadership will align with ownership, I said simply. Which is why I wanted to speak with you first. The manufacturing division is crucial to my vision for Harrington's future. I outlined my plans for integrating our production facilities more deeply with our technology development, creating a seamless ecosystem where innovation and manufacturing evolved in tandem rather than as sequential processes. Marcus leaned forward, enthusiasm breaking through his usually reserved demeanor. I've been advocating for this approach for years. Jack always insisted on keeping the divisions separate. Dad built this company in an era when manufacturing and technology were distinct disciplines, I explained. But that world doesn't exist anymore. Our competitors are tech companies moving into manufacturing, not traditional industrial firms. Nathan doesn't understand that either, Marcus observed, then looked momentarily concerned that he'd spoken too freely. This is a candid conversation, I assured him. I need honesty, not diplomacy. He relaxed slightly. Nathan's been pushing us to maximize short-term production numbers at the expense of retooling for next-generation products. It's creating a bottleneck that will become critical within 18 months. I know, I said. That's why I've been quietly funding the advanced manufacturing lab through my discretionary budget. The prototypes you've been testing after hours? They're ready to scale. Marcus stared at me, connecting dots he hadn't previously seen. You've been running a parallel development track. I've been ensuring we have options, I corrected. Options that are now on the table. By 10:15, I'd spoken with 3 more division leaders, each conversation following a similar pattern: initial surprise at my ownership revelation, followed by a gradual unburdening of frustrations with the current leadership, culminating in cautious optimism about the possibilities under a different vision. At 10:25, I made my way to the boardroom, a spacious chamber with sweeping views of Seattle's skyline. The massive oak table, Dad's pride, custom-made when the company first became profitable enough to occupy the downtown headquarters, dominated the space. I chose a seat at the head of the table, a position I'd never occupied before. Dad and Nathan arrived together at precisely 10:30, their expressions a study in controlled anger. Dad's jaw was set in the rigid determination I recognized from countless negotiations, while Nathan's face fluctuated between disbelief and indignation. "This is how you want to play it?" Dad asked without preamble, remaining standing even as Nathan sank into a chair. "Corporate theatrics? I'm not playing anything," I replied evenly. "I'm addressing a leadership transition that affects the entire company." "By staging a coup?" Nathan interjected. "By exercising my rights as majority shareholder," I corrected. "Rights I've held quietly for years while watching the company be steered toward an outdated vision." Dad placed his palms flat on the table, leaning forward. "I built Harrington Industries from nothing. 40 years of my life, my sweat, my reputation. You think you can just take that because of some legal maneuvering?" "I think the company deserves leadership that recognizes what it is now, not what it was when you founded it, I said. And I think that leadership should be determined by capability, not gender or birth order. This isn't about, Nathan began. It's exactly about that, I interrupted. My division consistently outperforms every metric. My innovations drive our growth. My patents secure our competitive advantage. Yet I was never even considered for succession. You're too valuable in product development, Dad insisted. Your technical expertise is one facet of my contribution, I finished. I've demonstrated financial acumen by personally funding our liquidity gap during the Richardson acquisition. I've shown strategic vision by establishing our IoT division against your objections, a division that now generates 20% of our profits. Dad straightened, crossing his arms. So what now? You force us out? Erase 40 years of leadership overnight? That depends on you, I said honestly. I'm not interested in erasing anything. I'm interested in building on the foundation you created to ensure Harrington thrives for another 40 years. Whether you and Nathan are part of that future is your choice. What's that supposed to mean? Nathan demanded. I turned to him directly. It means I value your client relationships and your sales capabilities. What I don't value is your resistance to innovation or your tendency to overpromise and underdeliver, like the Osaka disaster. He flushed. That was a technical failure. It was a leadership failure, I corrected. One that cost us a $50 million contract and damaged our reputation across Asian markets. One that occurred because you dismissed engineering realities as inconvenient details. Dad held up a hand, silencing Nathan's retort. What are you proposing, exactly? A restructured executive team with clearly defined roles based on demonstrated capabilities, I replied. I'll assume the CEO position effective immediately. Nathan can remain as Chief Revenue Officer, focusing on client relationships and domestic sales, areas where he excels when not overextending. And me? Dad asked quietly. Chairman Emeritus, I said. Advising on strategic direction, maintaining key industry relationships, but stepping back from operational decisions. The silence that followed was heavy with decades of family dynamics and corporate politics. Dad's expression shifted between anger, disbelief, and, most surprisingly, a flicker of what might have been respect. The board won't accept this, he finally said, though with less certainty than his words implied. The board already has, I countered. Jessica has been briefing them individually since yesterday evening. 3 have explicitly supported my leadership, 2 are reviewing the succession documentation, and 1, your friend Gerald, has expressed concern not about my capabilities but about the family implications. Dad's eyebrows rose. You've been busy. I've been prepared, I corrected. Something you taught me, though perhaps not intentionally. Nathan pushed back from the table. This is insane. You can't seriously expect me to work under my younger sister after being promised the CEO position. I met his gaze steadily. I expect you to make a business decision rather than an emotional one. Your strengths are real and valuable. Your limitations are equally real and have been demonstrably costly to this company. You can continue contributing in a role aligned with your capabilities, or you can leave. That's your choice. And if I leave? Then Harrington loses your client relationships and institutional knowledge, and you lose your connection to the company you've helped build. Nobody wins. Nathan stood abruptly. I need time to think. Take it, I said. The executive meeting is at 11. Your presence would be valuable, but it's not required. He stormed out, leaving Dad and me alone in the cavernous boardroom. The silence stretched between us, filled with unspoken words and shifting power dynamics. When did you become so ruthlessly effective? Dad finally asked, his tone caught between criticism and reluctant admiration. I've always been effective, I replied. The ruthlessness is new, a skill I developed when I realized merit alone wouldn't be enough. He sank into a chair, suddenly looking older than his 69 years. You really believe I overlooked you because you're a woman? It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. I believe you overlooked me because I don't fit your model of leadership, a model shaped by your generation, your industry, and yes, your gender. I don't golf with clients or close deals over whiskey. I build things that work and solve problems others don't see coming. And that makes you better qualified than Nathan? In today's technology-driven manufacturing landscape? Unquestionably. I softened my tone slightly. Dad, Harrington isn't the company you founded anymore. Our competitors aren't other traditional manufacturers, they're tech giants moving into industrial applications. Our advantages aren't production capacity or distribution networks, they're proprietary algorithms and integrated systems. He didn't respond immediately, his gaze drifting to the Seattle skyline visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I followed his line of sight to the gleaming towers of Amazon and Microsoft in the distance, the very companies I'd been warning about for years. "I'm not trying to erase your legacy," I said more gently. "I'm trying to ensure it continues. But continuation requires adaptation." He turned back to me, his expression unreadable. "You've planned for every contingency, haven't you? Legal ownership, board support, division alignment. You've been operating like a shadow CEO while performing your official role flawlessly." "I learned from watching you," I acknowledged. "The difference is that I've been planning for the company's success, not my own advancement." "And you think I haven't?" "I think you've conflated the two," I said carefully. "You believe Nathan's leadership is best for Harrington because you see yourself in him. But resemblance isn't competence, and tradition isn't strategy." The executive conference room filled quickly at 11 a.m., curiosity and uncertainty palpable. As division heads and senior management took their seats, Dad entered last, choosing a seat halfway down the table rather than his usual position at the head, a subtle but profound acknowledgement that shifted the energy in the room. Nathan was conspicuously absent. I remained standing, surveying the assembled leadership team, some allies, some skeptics, all essential to the company's future. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," I began. "As you may have heard, there have been significant developments regarding Harrington Industries' leadership structure." I outlined the facts directly, my majority ownership position, the succession plan effective immediately, the rationale behind the changes. No emotional appeals, no justifications beyond business necessity, no mention of the family dynamics that had precipitated this moment. "This transition isn't about personalities," I emphasized. "It's about positioning Harrington for success in a rapidly evolving industry landscape. The manufacturing sector is transforming. Our competitors are changing. Our advantages must evolve accordingly." I moved to the presentation screen, displaying the strategic vision I'd developed, a 5-year roadmap integrating our manufacturing expertise with emerging technologies, leveraging our industrial knowledge while embracing digital transformation. "This isn't a revolution," I clarified. "It's an acceleration of the innovation that has already made us successful. Many of you have contributed to initiatives that align with this vision, sometimes against institutional resistance. Those contributions will now be central to our strategy, not secondary considerations." The presentation continued for 30 minutes, covering market positioning, competitive analysis, organizational structure, and financial projections. Throughout, I acknowledged individual contributions and expertise, highlighting how each division would play a crucial role in the integrated approach. When I finished, there was a moment of silence before Markuschan spoke up. "This is the most coherent strategic vision I've seen in my 12 years with Harrington. My question is, why hasn't the board been presented with this before?" All eyes turned to Dad, the unspoken accusation hanging in the air. "Innovation always faces resistance," I answered diplomatically. "Especially when it challenges established paradigms. What matters is that we're aligned now." The questions that followed were substantive rather than political: implementation timelines, resource allocation, market positioning. The conversation shifted from the surprise of leadership change to the practicalities of executing a compelling vision, exactly as I'd hoped. Jessica approached me as the meeting concluded. "The board chair is requesting an emergency session. This afternoon. 3 o'clock. I nodded. "Expected. Set it up in the main boardroom." "Nathan called," she added more quietly. "He's cleaning out his office." I felt a pang despite my preparation for this possibility. "Tell him I'd like to speak with him before he leaves." The afternoon unfolded in a blur of meetings and decisions, conversations with key clients to assure continuity, discussions with our communications team about public messaging, preliminary reorganization of reporting structures to better align with the new strategy. At 2:30, I found myself standing outside Nathan's office, watching through the glass as he packed personal items into cardboard boxes. His movements were sharp, angry, his expression closed. I knocked lightly on the door frame. "Come to supervise." "The evacuation?" he asked without looking up. "Come to ask you to reconsider," I replied, entering despite his unwelcoming tone. "Why would I stay? To watch my little sister dismantle everything Dad built?" "To help rebuild it for the future," I countered. "Nathan, you're excellent with clients. You understand the industrial landscape in ways I never will. That knowledge is valuable, essential, even." He laughed bitterly. "So I should happily accept demotion and humiliation?" "It's only humiliation if you see it that way," I said. "I see it as appropriate alignment of responsibilities with capabilities. Something that should have happened years ago. Easy for you to say from the CEO's chair. A chair I earned through performance, not inheritance, I reminded him. The difference between us isn't that I'm smarter or more dedicated. It's that I recognize my limitations and work to overcome them, while you've coasted on strengths without addressing weaknesses. He finally looked up, anger giving way to something more complex. You really believe that, don't you? That this is all about merit? Because it is, I insisted. If you'd addressed the Osaka disaster by acknowledging your technical misunderstandings instead of blaming my team, if you'd met your division's targets instead of explaining away shortfalls, if you'd embraced innovation instead of resisting it, we might not be here now. He was silent for a long moment, considering my words. And if I stay? What exactly would my role be in your grand vision? Chief Revenue Officer, I said. Focusing on client relationships, market positioning, and sales strategy. No operational oversight of product development or manufacturing areas where your decisions have been consistently problematic. Under your direct authority. Under appropriate accountability, I corrected. Just like everyone else, including me. He turned away, staring out at the Seattle skyline. I need time to think. The board meeting is at 3, I said. Your presence would send a powerful message about family unity despite the leadership changes. And if I don't show? Then I'll respect your decision while keeping the door open for your return when you're ready. I left him to his thoughts, proceeding to my next commitment, a brief meeting with Dad before facing the board together. I found him in his office. Not packing but reorganizing, placing some items in drawers while positioning others more prominently on shelves. Redecorating? I asked from the doorway. He glanced up. Adapting to my new role. Chairman Emeritus needs a different office arrangement than CEO. The acceptance in his tone surprised me. You're staying, then? Did you expect me to abandon the company I built? He asked, though without the bitterness that might have accompanied such words hours earlier. I wasn't sure, I admitted. Your pride has always been your defining characteristic. Pride, yes. Foolishness, no. He gestured to the chair, opposite his desk. Your presentation was impressive. More importantly, it was right. Harrington needs to evolve faster than I've been willing to push it. I sat, wary of this unexpected reasonableness. What changed your mind? Not what. Who? He leaned back. Gerald Harper called after your executive meeting. Said you reminded him of me 40 years ago, seeing around corners, challenging conventional wisdom. Said the board would be idiots to lose you to a competitor just to preserve my ego. I couldn't hide my surprise. Gerald had been Dad's closest ally on the board for decades. Don't look so shocked, Dad continued. I built this company by recognizing talent and opportunity, even when it came in unexpected packages. I may have a blind spot where my children are concerned, but I'm not immune to compelling evidence. And the evidence convinced you? The quarterly numbers convinced me, he said bluntly. Your division consistently outperforms. Your innovations drive our growth. When I looked at the data without the filter of preconceptions. He shrugged. The conclusion was unavoidable. That couldn't have been easy to accept. It wasn't, he acknowledged. Still isn't, entirely. But I've always prided myself on making decisions based on facts rather than feelings. Would be hypocritical to abandon that principle now. The admission was as close to an apology as I was likely to get, an acknowledgement of error without directly confronting the biases that had caused it. For now, it was enough. The board meeting will be challenging, I said, changing the subject. Some members will resist the rapid transition. Some will, he agreed. Gerald won't. Neither will Patricia or Michael. The others will follow their lead, especially if I visibly support the change. And will you? He met my gaze directly. You're my daughter, Emma. More importantly, you're clearly the right person to lead Harrington into its next phase. Yes. I'll support you, publicly and privately. As we walked together toward the boardroom, I felt a shift in our relationship, not reconciliation exactly, but a rebalancing, a mutual recognition of strengths and limitations that had been long overdue. The board meeting would bring its own challenges, and Nathan's decision would impact the family dynamics for years to come. But in that moment, striding purposefully beside the father who had finally seen me clearly, I knew that Harrington Industries had turned an essential corner, not just in leadership but in vision and possibility. The company would evolve, adapt, and thrive under guidance that recognized the changing landscape. And in that evolution lay the true continuation of Dad's legacy, not through replication but through transformation, not through inheritance but through earned authority. The glass doors of the boardroom loomed ahead, the assembled board members visible through the transparent walls. I straightened my shoulders and stepped forward into a future I had not just inherited but created through persistence, preparation, and the courage to claim what I had earned. 1 year has passed since that pivotal board meeting when I officially assumed the CEO position of Harrington Industries. The Seattle skyline glitters through my office windows, the corner office I claimed that first day, not my father's more ostentatious space but one that reflects my own leadership style, open, transparent, forward-looking. The morning sun catches on the award we received last month, Manufacturing Innovation of the Year, for our integrated smart factory system. It sits beside the framed cover of Industry Week featuring our company transformation story. My morning ritual remains unchanged despite my elevated position. I arrive at 6:30 a.m., review overnight performance metrics from our global operations, and walk the product floor before most executives have even left their homes. Today, however, is different. Today marks 1 year since everything changed, for the company and for our family. Marcus Chin meets me at the entrance to our newly expanded innovation lab, pride evident in his posture. As our recently appointed Chief Operating Officer, he's overseen the integration of manufacturing and technology development, a unification that has accelerated our production capabilities beyond even my optimistic projections. The Singapore team sent their final testing reports overnight, he says, falling into step beside me. The new sensor array is exceeding efficiency targets by 18%. Production timeline? I ask, scanning the bustling workspace. Where engineers and manufacturing specialists collaborate without the artificial divisions that once separated them. We can begin scaled manufacturing next month, he confirms. 3 months ahead of schedule. This acceleration has become our new normal, projects completing faster, innovations deploying sooner, barriers dissolving between previously siloed departments. The changes weren't easy or without resistance, but the results speak for themselves. Market share up 17%, profit margins expanded, employee satisfaction at record levels. The quarterly board presentation is ready for your review, Marcus adds as we complete our floor tour. Finance is projecting our strongest performance since the company's founding. I nod, grateful but not surprised. Have the full metrics sent to all employees before the markets open. Everyone contributed to these results, everyone should share in the recognition. This transparency, this sharing of both challenges and triumphs, has been central to my leadership approach. Unlike the closely guarded information flow of my father's era, we now operate with radical openness. Employees at all levels understand our strategic direction, our competitive position, our financial realities. This shared knowledge has unleashed creativity and commitment that quarterly bonuses alone could never inspire. As I return to my office, Jessica Chen is waiting, tablet in hand, her role expanded from General Counsel to Chief Legal Officer and Trusted Advisor. The Richardson integration team needs your decision on the pension plan consolidation, she begins, efficient as always. Tell them to proceed with the more generous option, I reply without hesitation. The cost difference is minimal compared to the goodwill and retention benefits. She makes a note, a small smile playing at her lips. Nathan predicted you'd say that. The mention of my brother brings a complex wave of emotions. After storming out that first day, Nathan disappeared for 3 weeks, no contact, no forwarding address, his status within the company an open question that complicated our transition messaging and destabilized key client relationships. When he finally returned, it wasn't to accept the Chief Revenue Officer position I'd offered but to propose an alternative. He would establish Harrington Strategic Consulting as a separate but affiliated entity, leveraging his client relationships and industry knowledge while maintaining his connection to the family business without direct reporting lines that might inflame lingering resentments. The arrangement proved unexpectedly beneficial. Free from operational responsibilities that had never suited his temperament, Nathan flourished in the pure relationship-building role. His consultancy became a valuable channel for market intelligence and client feedback, while the separation provided necessary space for our personal relationship to recalibrate. Is he joining us for the anniversary dinner? Asked Jessica, referring to the small celebration planned for the executive team this evening. He confirmed this morning, she says. Said he has interesting developments to discuss. I make a mental note to prepare for whatever Nathan considers interesting. His definition often differs significantly from mine. My morning continues with back-to-back meetings, research and development reviews, quarterly strategy sessions, investor relations preparations. The rhythm of executive leadership has become familiar, though the weight of responsibility never lightens. Every decision impacts not just the business metrics but the livelihoods of our 3,700 employees worldwide. At noon, I have my standing lunch with Dad, a tradition we established during the transition period and maintained even as his involvement in day-to-day operations diminished. We meet in his office rather than mine, a deliberate choice that acknowledges his foundational Roll while reflecting our new power dynamic. The Osaka contract is officially signed, I tell him after we've settled with our salads, his concession to the heart concerns that emerged during his executive physical last month. 3 years, 47 million, with expansion options. That could double the value. His eyebrows rise appreciatively. The same Osaka that walked away after Nathan's disaster? The very same, I confirm. Their new CTO toured our integrated manufacturing facility last month. Said our technological advances made them reconsider their supplier strategy. Dad nods slowly, pride and something like wonder crossing his features. You've accomplished more in 12 months than I managed in my last 5 years. The admission still surprises me, though he's become increasingly comfortable acknowledging the company's transformation under my leadership. The journey hasn't been smooth, there were tense disagreements in those early months, moments when old patterns threatened to reassert themselves. But gradually, respect replaced resistance, collaboration overcame competition. Different times require different approaches, I say diplomatically. The foundation you built made our current innovations possible. He chuckles, seeing through my professional courtesy to the family dynamics beneath. You can say it, Emma. I was too slow to adapt. Too wedded to outdated models. Too blind to recognize the leadership potential right in front of me. This direct acknowledgement, still rare despite our improved relationship, catches me off guard. You weren't entirely wrong, I concede. Nathan does have valuable skills. His consultancy has opened doors we struggled with for years. Nathan's good with people, Dad agrees. Always has been. But you're good with the future, seeing it, shaping it, preparing for it. That's the more essential quality for leadership today. He pauses, setting down his fork. Which brings me to something I've been considering. I'd like to step down as chairman. I study him carefully, searching for signs of health concerns or family pressures. Any particular reason? The board values your historical perspective. The board follows your lead now, he says matter-of-factly. My presence sometimes complicates dynamics that would be cleaner without the founder hovering in the background. Besides, your mother has been suggesting we spend winters in Arizona. Might be time to listen. The mention of mom brings another layer of complexity. She struggled significantly with the leadership transition, having internalized the same gender expectations that influenced Dad's succession planning. Our relationship remains strained, though civil, weekly calls filled with surface pleasantries that carefully avoid business discussions. You've earned the right to step back, I acknowledge. But I'd prefer a phased transition rather than an abrupt departure. Perhaps reduced responsibilities while maintaining the title through next year's major initiatives? He considers this, nodding slowly. Reasonable compromise. I'll draft a transition plan for your review. As lunch concludes, he gestures to the Industry Week cover prominently displayed on his credenza, my photograph above the headline, Reinventing American Manufacturing, How Emma Harrington Transformed a Family Business into an Innovation Powerhouse. I keep that there to remind myself, he says quietly. Of what? That leadership isn't about resemblance. It's about results. He smiles slightly, repeating my own words from our confrontation a year ago. Took me 70 years to truly understand that. Better late than never, I suppose. The afternoon brings a video conference with our European leadership team, reviewing the integration of a small German sensor company we acquired 3 months ago, our first major acquisition under my leadership. The German engineering team had initially resisted our management approach, skeptical of American corporate culture and protective of their technical autonomy. Attitudes have shifted dramatically since the Joint Innovation Workshop, reports Ilse Bauer, our European Operations Director. When they saw their designs incorporated into the development roadmap with full attribution and resources, resistance transformed into enthusiasm. Their lead engineer called it refreshingly meritocratic, adds our European HR Director with a smile. Apparently, he's not accustomed to having technical contributions recognized at the executive level. I suppress a knowing smile, all too familiar with the experience of technical expertise being devalued in traditional corporate hierarchies. Schedule a personal visit for me next month. I want to meet with their full team, not just leadership. As the day progresses, I review the final preparations for tomorrow's all-hands meeting where we'll announce our quarterly results and unveil the next phase of our strategic plan. The presentation includes comprehensive recognition of team contributions across all divisions, another departure from the previous era when credit flowed upward while responsibility flowed downward. At 5:30 p.m., Jessica reminds me of the executive anniversary dinner scheduled for 7 o'clock. Car service will meet you downstairs at 6:30. Business casual attire as requested. I thank her and spend the remaining hour reviewing personal notes on Each executive attending tonight's small celebration, reminders of their individual contributions to our successful year, specific achievements worth highlighting, family updates to inquire about. These personal connections, once dismissed by Dad as soft skills unnecessary for technical leadership, have proven essential to building the cohesive executive team that drove our transformation. The restaurant is a small, elegant space overlooking Elliott Bay, selected for its private dining room rather than flashy prominence. As I arrive, I'm struck by how different this gathering feels from the stiff, hierarchical executive dinners of my father's era. The atmosphere is warm, collegiate, energized. Division heads greet each other with genuine affection rather than political calculation. Nathan arrives last, characteristically making an entrance in a perfectly tailored suit that makes everyone else's business casual seem underdressed. But his smile is genuine as he approaches me, the awkwardness of our early post-transition interactions largely faded. "The conquering CEO," he says, embracing me briefly. "Congratulations on an impressive year." "Thank you for coming," I reply sincerely. "Your contribution has been significant, even from the consulting side." He grins. "Speaking of which, I have news. But let's save it for after dinner. Tonight is about celebrating Harrington Industries' renaissance." The meal unfolds with relaxed conversation and genuine camaraderie. Dad observes more than participates, a small smile playing at his lips as he watches the dynamic team I've assembled, diverse in background, expertise, and perspective, united by shared purpose and mutual respect. After the main course, I stand to offer a brief toast, surveying the faces around the table. 1 year ago, we embarked on a transformation that many considered impossible. We broke down silos between departments, challenged traditional hierarchies, reimagined our approach to innovation and manufacturing. The results speak for themselves, record performance across every metric that matters. Murmurs of agreement circle the table as I continue. But numbers alone don't capture what we've built. The true achievement is cultural, a company where merit trumps title, where ideas are evaluated on their potential rather than their source, where collaboration replaces competition. I raise my glass. To the executive team that made this possible. To the employees who embrace change rather than resisting it. And to the future we continue building together. As glasses clink and conversation resumes, Nathan approaches, gesturing toward the terrace. "Got a minute?" "That news I mentioned." We step outside into the cool evening air, the lights of Seattle creating a glittering backdrop across the bay. Nathan seems uncharacteristically hesitant, fidgeting with his watch in a way that reminds me of our childhood. "I've been offered a position," he says finally. "Chief Client Officer at Westridge Technologies." The announcement hits me harder than expected. Westridge isn't a direct competitor, but their expansion into industrial applications has positioned them adjacent to our market space. More significantly, Nathan's consultancy has become an integral part of our intelligence gathering and relationship management strategy. "That's significant," I manage, processing the implications. "Their headquarters is in Boston." "It is," he confirms. "Which means relocating." "Selling my stake in the consultancy." "Making a clean break." I study him carefully, searching for the underlying motivation. "Why now?" "Your consultancy is thriving. Your relationship with Harrington is stable. What's driving this?" He leans against the railing, looking out at the water rather than meeting my eyes. "Do you remember when we were kids, how Dad would take me to client dinners? How you'd beg to come along but always got left behind?" I nod, the memory still carrying a sting despite my professional success. "I was so proud," he continues. "Being the chosen one, the son who got to see behind the curtain while you stayed home. It felt like confirmation that I was special. Destined for leadership." He turns to face me directly. But Dad wasn't doing me any favors. He was creating an illusion, that charm and connections were enough, that I didn't need to develop the substance beneath the style. When reality hit last year, it hit hard. "You've built something valuable with the consultancy," I point out. "Proven your worth on your own terms. Within the safe harbor of the family name," he counters. "The Westridge offer is different. It's based solely on my capabilities, not my inheritance. It's a chance to discover what Nathan Harrington can achieve without the safety net." The realization dawned slowly, this isn't about competition or resentment. It's about self-discovery, about finding authentic purpose beyond the roles we were assigned in the family narrative. "You need to know if you can succeed completely on your own," I say, understanding at last. He nods, relief evident in his expression. "Exactly. Just like you needed to know if you could lead without Dad's approval. Different paths to the same destination, self-definition beyond family expectations. I consider the implications for both the business and our relationship. The consultancy clients. Already addressed, he assures me. I've identified potential successors for each major relationship. Jessica has the transition documentation. Nothing will fall through the cracks. Of course, he's prepared thoroughly, a capability I'd underestimated in the shadow of his more obvious interpersonal skills. When would you start? Next month. But I wanted to tell you first, before presenting it to Dad. The consideration touches me unexpectedly. He'll take it hard, I warn. You leaving the Harrington orbit entirely? Probably, Nathan agrees. But maybe it's time we both stopped making decisions based on Dad's reactions. We share a moment of silent understanding, two adults finally stepping fully into our own identities, shaped by but no longer defined by our father's expectations. I think it's the right move, I say finally. Difficult for the company short term, but ultimately healthier for you. And for us as siblings. Relief crosses his features. That means a lot coming from you. After everything. We rejoin the dinner as dessert is being served, the conversation having evolved to ambitious ideas. For the coming year. I observe the animated exchanges, the natural collaboration that has replaced the careful political calculations of the previous era, and feel a profound satisfaction that transcends quarterly numbers or market position. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss any upload from us.